Because I have the ability to communicate an idea well, it's gotten me into rooms that I wouldn't have gotten in before. Somebody else who has a different skill set, maybe you're really good at running the numbers, which is one of the things I initially partnered with my previous partner on, because he was really good at being dialed in and building out programs for us to run the numbers on our deals. That was a skill set that got him into that right room. So for anybody listening, if you're operating at a high level, it's less daunting when you rely on your experiences of the past to apply it to your new transition versus saying, I don't know anything about this. I don't have anything to offer. What is it that makes you unique?
Welcome to Burning the Ships podcast, and I'm your host, Jason Seward. And today I've got my good buddy, Mr. Trevor B. West. Welcome to Burning the Ships, my man.
Dude, it's actually funny because so many times you've been like, dude, when are you going to be on the podcast? Oh, dude, I'm going to schedule it. And then, oh, man, just like the craziness of life. But, dude, super excited to be here. When you first started the podcast, I was like, interested to see where it would go. And I mean, it's been how long? I mean, how many episodes have you guys done? It's super impressive.
Yeah, I think you will be probably our 165th episode. So
that's crazy.
We've been rolling along and trying to crank it out pretty consistent, but you're right. And I've told you this before, like when we started the podcast, my first wave of guests, I had a natural market of folks from my masterminds, and you were obviously one of them. And I knocked everybody off but you. And I kept reaching out, and you're like, let's do it. And we'd have to reschedule, and we finally got it done. And I'm happy for you. So, but before we get into everything, I'll introduce you here in a second, but I start every episode with my son gives me a joke to tell as a part of his contribution to the podcast. So every week we have JJ's joke of the week. Throwing a little curveball this week, one of his good friends, Kendall, gave me a joke to tell this week. So here we go. Why don't ants get sick? Because they have strong antibodies. And that is JJ/Kendall's Jokes of the Week. So now we got that out of the way. That's all. It's always a fun thing. He's 9 years old, doesn't listen to a single word I say on these podcasts, but he always wants to hear me tell his Joke of the Week. So yeah, it's all.
He'll remember that forever.
So Trevor B. West, owner and CEO of Hive Community Investments, an Air Force veteran. You were an intelligence analyst in the Air Force, and you've got a great story that we're going to get into here in a minute or a few minutes about that. Some of your experiences there. You're a speaker. You MC a lot of events. And that's where I've gotten to know you through Legacy Family Mastermind. You've MC'd every event I've been to since I've been there, which has been about 3 years. Do a fantastic job with that, and you travel the country going to other people's events and other masterminds, and that's a service you provide. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that because you've got some uniqueness to the way you handle these events. I've been to events all over the world with my former career and now in real estate. There's nobody like you that actually carries an event, brings the energy, keeps the energy up, and we'll get more into that in a minute. I think now your unit count, you're a real estate investor, and you're up to 72 units. Is that correct?
73. We just closed on a commercial building.
Let's go.
Yes, sir.
And grinding. And like I know just because I've followed your story and I talked to you a lot about it. There were many years or handful of years there where you were grinding and it wasn't a lot of activity happening, but now that grind is starting to or those seeds are starting to sprout, and you're getting some harvest there. So with that, Trevor, I'm going to turn it over to you and let you kind of introduce yourself at a higher level or a deeper level. And then I've got a bunch of questions behind that. So let's go.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. That was a great intro. And again, I'm super excited to be here, and real estate has just been a tremendous blessing to my life. It changed my life forever. So, going back, graduated high school, worked a construction job for a little bit while I was waiting for a job in the Air Force. I originally joined because, I wanted to go and do special forces. All my buddies were going off to college. I had a little bit of FOMO because I'm like, oh, college does sound like a good time. But I hated school. I hated structured education in that way. It just didn't interest me. And so I originally wanted to do special forces, but I went to do my physical with the Air Force, and I found out that I was colorblind. So it nixed a lot of the jobs for me. I wasn't able to do, I went from like 150 jobs that I could choose from to like 20. And so I chose Intel because it seemed like the next coolest thing. And I had to wait for a job for that to open. So I worked a construction job, and finally that job opened, but my recruiter along the way was saying, hey man, we could probably get you into that job if you just go and leave a little sooner. And I'm like, no, sir. I am waiting for this job. I don't know why exactly. I just had that feeling that, I needed to just hold out for the specific thing that I wanted, and end up working out. So I got the job in operations intelligence, and they make you seem like you're going to be James Bond, when they write out the description, like you're going to be the guy, and turns out you just sit in a room with a bunch of nerds. Like we're all just as nerds in a dark room typing away, watching, whatever, global war on terror, watching whatever group that we were tasked to watch. So I went through all my training, learned so many different things because the world of intel is so vast. I mean, we were learning about Russian and Chinese missile systems and Iranian aircraft and all these different things. And then I got a job in Langley, Virginia, where again we were working the global war on terror, and we were learning all the different things about special operations and about these terrorist organizations. And I got rep after rep after rep briefing people. My job was to gather information and tell it to people, whether it was trigger pullers, commanders, or my peers. So every time, I was just like, here's the new daily update. Here's what we have going on. Here are the changes in the battle space. And then I got an opportunity. A recruiter came around recruiting for a special operations unit. They couldn't tell us anything really about it. They couldn't tell us where it was, what the unit was called, what they did. They just said the types of things that you see as headlines on CNN, those are the types of missions that we conduct. And I was like, oh, dude, that's it. That's my in. And so I submitted an application, and they weren't accepting people of my rank at that time. But for whatever reason, they made an exception. I got selected for an interview. So they bring you down for a 5-day interview, and they take you through the gauntlet of, IQ tests. They take you through psychological tests, briefings. I was just sharing this story with my wife. They're doing this briefing, and it is absolute hell on wheels because they put you in this room, they give you this scenario, and they say, okay, helicopters went down, it had special forces guys on it, you need to figure out the situation. In 25 minutes, the commander and his team are going to come in here, and they're going to you're going to give them an update. So they're giving me these, every 2 minutes, they would give me a new update. And I'm just so overwhelmed with the information, and I'm doing my best to figure it out. Commander comes in, and it's time to brief him and his team of people. And I turn around and I start basically describing the situation, and they asked me one question, and they said, what country are we in? And I'm like, oh my God, I didn't even zoom out to see which country we were located in. And I just felt this wave of pressure come over me. And I'm like, dude, so I turn around, scroll out. Okay, we're in the country of Iran. And so they started asking me questions because they could see that I was overwhelmed. And they asked me one question, which was, if we were to say, okay, we're sending some people in to rescue them, to bring them out, because the whole unit that I was going to, the point was to rescue friendly forces that had been injured behind enemy lines. what type of aircraft would we use to get a new team in there to get them out of there? And I said a Chinook. And I don't know exactly where that information came from because my world was intelligence, reconnaissance, and surveillance, which means we were using drones. But I had learned all these things through immersion and, taking the extra step while my other peers were just kind of like, messing around when there wasn't anything to do. I was learning more things about my mission set. And as soon as I said Chinook, I was like, oh, it made me realize I have all this information in my brain that I didn't know that I was even preparing for. And it just gave me this wave of confidence. And they asked question after question after question. And then I did really good in the briefing. So it was like that moment. I was like, oh, I can actually operate at a high level. So then I ended up getting hired. I was the second youngest person to get hired there. And I got to do some really cool stuff. 5 months after I got there, they tapped me to deploy to Afghanistan. And I went through a bunch of training to learn how to target specific individuals using the variety of intelligence platforms and resources that I had. Deployed to Afghanistan, and I was the military attaché, if you will, but the military liaison to the CIA. So I showed up, and there was a team of 10 to 12 CIA ground branch operatives, and I was their intelligence guy. I would task the drones in the planes to go and fly over our targets. I would develop those targets and build a pattern of life, get approval from the commander to conduct kill capture operations on the individual, brief my team on all the specifics. I need to know who the guy was, where he was, who his friends are, where he went to sleep, where he woke up, and all the things in between. What type of village is he in? Are they friendly to U.S. forces? Or are they anti-U.S. forces? Are they friendly to Taliban? In the route in between. When was the last time there was an IED? When was the last time there was a ambush on U.S. forces? Brief my guys, tell them the information, and boom, they'd go out the door that night. And all the while I'm watching, communicating with them over radio as I'm seeing what the plane is seeing. And that was just an eye-opening experience. To operate at such a high level. I was 22 or 23 at the time. To operate at such a high level, 18, 20-hour days, no excuses. And they told me when I got there, you could get one chance to mess up. You mess up that same thing again, and you're gone. Because you're dealing with people's lives. When people's lives are on the line, it changes everything about how you operate. And so it was a really great experience, and it kind of carried on throughout the rest of my military career. And I loved what I did. But I could see that the global war on terror for our specific unit was starting to shift. We weren't doing as much of that. I was the last person from my unit to ever go and run that seat. And there was very few Air Force intelligence people that ever got to do that. 99.9% of the military will never get to experience the things that I got to experience. So it was really, really cool. I'm very grateful for that experience. But as the GWAR, Global War on Terror, was ending, I started to see that I didn't love it as much as I thought. That structured environment of just finding information, if there's not a specific end result that we're going to go for, my interest is gone. So, me being a young guy in the military, I was living with 3 really great roommates. Like, we just like to drink and party and go and live a promiscuous lifestyle, spend all of my dollars, like every penny that I had before I got paid again. So I'd put the rest on credit cards. And I was about $20,000 in debt, living, my best life, if you will. And I had no direction. I was just kind of doing my thing. And so I joined the rugby team, the local semi-pro rugby team, me and my buds, and we had a great time. And on one fateful day on the rugby pitch, I ended up getting my leg snapped by some ginormous human being. And it was just like, completely shattered, hanging my left foot. And so I had to get surgery, and it put me on the couch. And a blessing in disguise is all of my roommates deployed. They were either on a really long trip for work or they were in a deployed location. And it was me, my Percocets, my wheelchair, and my Netflix account. And man, it was the first time in my life after you burn through 100 hours of Netflix, I was alone. And I'm an extroverted person. I love being around people, but I was alone. And it made me start thinking about where I wanted my life to go. And I had no idea. I had no idea what the future would hold for me as I was falling out of love with this thing that I was currently doing but nothing to replace it with. And so I got scared, but that fear caused me to take action. I was like, oh, I'll go get my degree. That's what everybody else is doing. The successful people in my life. Taking math class, hated every second of it. Get to the final exam. They're going to proctor it. They're going to realize that I'd been cheating the entire time. So I quit. And I thought, well, man, if I can get a hold of my money, if I can manage my money well, I'll be successful. And so I went and bought a bunch of books on financial literacy, Think and Grow Rich, Simple Path to Wealth, Accounting 101, and then, of course, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad in 2 days, never read a book cover to cover in my whole life. And it was just the light switch. It was like, this is something that I can take and build with my own 2 hands, and nobody can stop me. I don't need a degree. I don't need permission. I can just go. Went and learned everything I could about real estate investing, from the podcast to the books to the YouTubes to the online community college course. I consumed it all with the goal in mind of defying analysis paralysis, getting into my first deal. And so 3 months later, I bought my first 3-unit building. I decided multifamily is my strategy. That's what is going to work best for me, get monthly cash flow. And once I bought that building and saw the checks rolling in, I thought, man, all I have to do is do that again. And I got to figure out how. And that's how I got started in real estate.
So I've got a million questions. Well, first, from a timeline standpoint, what year did you enter into the military? I'm trying to follow the timeline.
I got into the military in 2012. I left for basic training, November 27, 2012.
Okay. And then when did you buy that 3-unit?
I bought that 3-unit. I closed on it October 30th of 2019.
Okay. Gotcha. All right. So that gives me a timeline to work with. So first thing, as you were talking about that time that you that you had to be laid up because of the injury, and then the time that like you were in the trenches of the military doing all that, but your lifestyle was like what you were consuming and through life was just not great. You're out partying, you're doing your thing. It reminds me, and this is timely because I'm just now listening to this podcast. Do you know the Sean Ryan show? It's a podcast. Yeah, he's like,
is he the CIA guy?
Yeah, he's special forces, did some work with CIA. He's
Okay.
But his most recent episode, he had a guy named Jay Cowell on there. Check that out. It's like a 5-hour podcast, but I'll send it to you. But he talked about just what you're talking about, getting lost in that routine of, you're deployed, and then in between deployments, you're working up for the next deployment, but you're living this lifestyle of, like the way he put it, chasing women and spending way more than you had, living this lifestyle, trying to project this image. But that was all he was doing, and it went on for years. And to hear you say that kind of reminded me, I just heard him talk about it this morning. So that's kind of a tangent. But the first question I have, you are an exceptional communicator. You and I've heard you say this before about and I feel the same way. I'm not the smartest person in any room I'm ever in. It's probably on the lower end of intelligence when it comes to intelligence. You've said that about yourself as well, but what you are strong at is communicating ideas and thoughts and communicating vision. Would you say that, like you talked about in that briefing room, giving that first briefing in front of those guys and walking through that and communicating what you saw and a vision and all that, was that your training ground for how well of a communicator you are now? And I mean, if you want to elaborate on that a little bit.
Absolutely. So when you go to tech school, which is where we learn how to be intelligence analysts, they don't really tell you in the description how often you're going to need to speak publicly. And so this was a shock to a lot of people. You got all types of different people from all different types of walks of life that are now in this room. They got to learn everything and then give your first briefing. Dude, we had people pee themselves. We had people freeze and just not say anything for 5 minutes. Like, okay, well, just you're gonna have to leave now.
Yeah.
So, but for me, it was exciting. My mom always told me, you have the gift of gab. But I hadn't sharpened it. I hadn't done anything with it until I got to the Air Force. So we're constantly doing, briefing updates and rep after rep after rep. My first briefing was horrifying, right? It was terrible because I didn't know how to construct my timeline in terms of how can I make this easily digestible, just because, I was like a baby gazelle in a new environment. So throughout the 6 months of our training, this is what it looked like. And we had this culmination event at the end of our training where it was weeks and weeks of us building a target set. We were focused on North Korea and we needed to build all this information. And I remember the specific briefing that I gave where it started to click for me. But I had given dozens and dozens and dozens of briefings prior to this one. But there was one briefing where I started talking about the Taliban. We were doing a mission set on Afghanistan, the Taliban, and how they would hide in specific areas to conduct ambush attacks. And it was like, boom, oh my gosh, I'm actually getting good at this. And once I realized, oh, I'm good at this, I'm building this skill, then it was like, okay, now I'm all in on this. I want to be the best communicator when I get up to brief the commander, I want them to be thankful that it's me briefing them and not someone else. And so just rep after rep after rep. And then you get to your new base and it's again, now it's for real. And all that training is now we're briefing on real life things that are happening. And at my first base at Langley, it wasn't like the briefings that I were giving, we were then going to go conduct operations on. No, we're just briefing the commander on keeping awareness of the battle space, and then they would take that information and give it to their higher ups or whatever. But when I got to my base at Fort Bragg, and then I deployed, those briefings had immediate battle space effects. So if I had gone from my training to Afghanistan, dude, I wouldn't have had the reps. I wouldn't have had the practice. I wouldn't have had built the skill set. So I had to go through all these things in order to get there. But when you get, Tony Robbins says that the mother of all skill is repetition, rep after rep after rep. And that's what helped me build that out. So when I got out of the Air Force, I took to social media to continue to have that. That's just, it was ingrained in me to gather information and tell a story, to bring it to an audience. And then, of course, I stepped into the role as being a live event MC, and all those things had prepared me for stepping onto stages, stepping into the battle space in Afghanistan or Libya or wherever it was that I was at.
So I want to segue into your speaking experience and all of that here in a little bit. But I asked you before we started recording, you shared a story, a very specific story, and made a great analogy just to life and business with that story when we were in Napa Valley a couple weeks ago. You running the event as the MC. Do you mind sharing that story? You can take it wherever you want. You can do a condensed version if you want, but I thought it was a fantastic way that you used real life military experience and made a wonderful analogy to real life business experience. So if you don't mind sharing that, I'd love to hear it again or share with your area.
Absolutely. What we were talking about is, dialing in on the business side of things, clarity, dialing in vision, dialing in sticking through the tough times, being able to maneuver when things are uncertain or even scary, or how do we thrive in this environment that we are in, not just survive, not sit on the sidelines. Most investors are sitting on the sidelines waiting to see what happens in the market. And it got me thinking about my first target in Afghanistan. So before I got out there, I mean, I was fresh to the unit, going through my initial training of how to do this at a high level. So right before I got there, 2 CIA agents were tragically killed by a Taliban operative. And it was just, I mean, I got there and everything slowed down to a point. And again, that action towards bias, the highest operators in the world have that action, that bias towards action. And everything became about this target. His name was Sangari. And I mean, the military, they sent shockwaves through the CIA community, through the special forces community, because it's how is it that the most trained, the most equipped forces in the world could be taken down by a Taliban operative who doesn't have he doesn't have the tanks, he doesn't have the trucks, he doesn't have the big guns, he doesn't have a helmet or a safety vest, he doesn't have the ability to see at night because we had night vision goggles. How is it that the most trained can be taken down? And it got me thinking about how we as high-level operators have all of these resources available to us. And sometimes we get complacent because by and large, for the majority of the people that I know in real estate have stacked up a lot of wins. We stacked up so rep after rep after rep, gaining experience, buying more deals, making more money, having a greater impact. And it's the same thing with the highest trained forces in the world. When you go out and you are you are the most elite fighting force the planet has ever seen, and you're going up against those people who don't have the same level of expertise, they don't have the same training, they don't have the same equipment, you stack up a lot of wins. And I mean, we would go rep after rep after rep, because honestly, we would go on missions almost every single night. If we didn't go out on a mission, those guys would be coming to me like, bro, where are my targets? I need to get out there and get it done. Right. So there was that pressure to go and constantly get in. We stacked up a lot of wins. We certainly did. And through those stacking up those wins, I think we oftentimes will forget that we underestimate the targets that we're going after. We might even get a little sloppy. We might even get a little lazy. And that laziness will cause inevitably us to make mistakes. So we had to dial everything in to get Sangari. So I show up into the battle space. We're targeting Sangari among other targets, but he's like our main focus. I'm building target package for him. We need to build a whole pattern of life because now he knows that he's being targeted. He knows that we are coming for him. So of course, naturally, he goes to lay low. And I show up in the battle space. We need to build a new pattern of life. I need to know all of his old cell phone numbers. I need to know all the ways that we can target him and all the people that he talks to. Who would he go to in a time of trouble? And then we had down the way from us in the same building, we had the CIA case officers. And those are the people that build out sources. They go into the local communities. They get people who are willing for a price to bring information, valuable information. So in conjunction with me finding all the places that he would potentially turn to and the people that he potentially turn to, case officers are building out and gaining information from the ground. You marry those things up, and now we've built out, okay, now we know where he is. And the source has built a relationship with him. And so the source, after about 30 days, we found out where he was. He gifted him the target. He was gifted a leather jacket, but it wasn't just any ordinary jacket. It had IR sensors in the shoulder pads. So when we had a drone overhead, we could see where he was at any given moment because oftentimes they would turn their cell phones off. And again, through building trust with the source was building trust with Sangari, basically told him, hey, the Americans are going to get you one way or another. But they said that they would spare you if you gave up information on ISIS operatives in the area. He was a Taliban guy. So naturally, the most important thing to him is his life. So he agreed. They brought him out to a safe house. And, long story short, that was the end of Sangari, right? And he did not get the opportunity to give up those ISIS guys because we wanted vengeance for our, operatives that had been killed. And the moral of the story is we needed to come to a point after something tragic had happened. We had to get to a point where it's like, okay, what is the clarity of our mission? What is it that we are up against? How can we build out a vision? Everybody came to the same point as like, okay, we want to get Sangari by any means necessary. And so through that, we were able to understand, what does the battle space look like? We need to coordinate with ground branch and our case officers and the military all coming together and converging using our best resources to capture the target, while also staying vigilant about the threat of the forces that we are going after. And it just brought all this to a point because, operating in a complex and ever-changing battle space, we've got to stay vigilant in this environment. As real estate investors, we have to stay vigilant, not just so that we can survive, but so that we can thrive. Are we taking advantage of all the things that are available to us so that we can go forth and conduct our own kill capture operations, i.e. taking down the right opportunities, building the right relationships and the right partnerships, being strategic, and also not underestimating what it is that we're facing?
Man, there's so many things I want to touch on there. The biggest parallel, I think, the takeaway for most listeners who, most of our audience has not had experiences like you have, obviously, and when it comes to the military. But to hear you talk through that story and other things you've touched on, it's very clear to me the parallel for you. Like now I've watched you build this portfolio up, right? When I met you, I don't know, you probably had less than 10 units. I met you 3 years ago, so I don't know what you had at that point, but you've built the bulk of your portfolio since I met you. And I've watched you along the way, followed your social media, and in conversations with you. Every step of the way, you've faced some type of adversity. It did not go as planned. You had to be nimble. You had to be creative. You had to communicate a vision to lenders and contractors and all these things. You talk about reps. You got reps. It wasn't in real estate, but you got reps in that type of mentality of just learning how to figure out and plow through things, right? Creatively, and be a communicator that is undoubtedly setting you up to launch. And it already has. I mean, you're at 73 units, and what's your goal? Like 100 by the end of the year, 150, something like that?
150 by the end of the year. Yeah.
Yeah. So I just love that parallel there, especially for you, because you articulate it so well. And I think a lot of people will resonate with that, and can clearly see where that experience has helped you tremendously now that you're in the real estate space. So now let's segue to that. You mentioned 2019, you bought your first property, 3 units. Based off kind of the story you told, I can't imagine you had a lot of money then, right? You didn't go pay cash for those 3 units, right?
Correct.
So, and all along the way, you haven't paid cash for all these units that you've bought. So talk to us. And in fact, I got a message yesterday from an old friend of mine that he's a little disgruntled with his career and he wants to get into real estate, doesn't know where to start. And he was just asking me, like, I don't have money to go buy things. And I'm like, all right, man, I'll help you. You got to get creative. And so speak to that. You were able to get into real estate, start learning, putting the reps in. You surrounded yourself by good people and good mentors. But how did you do it? Like, how did you, with no money, go from nothing to 3 to now 73? If you can kind of quickly walk us through that process and the mindset.
Yeah. So, I mean, just kind of, again, touching on the story about Sangari and using the resources that are available to us. We had different resources than the other forces that, like, because where we were at in Afghanistan, there was basically where we were at, which was the CIA portion, and then there was the regular army portion. We had different resources and we had different targets than they had. So we had to use what was available to us. It just happened to be, the best stuff that we could ever use. But, I had to use the resources that were available to me in the moment. When I started learning about real estate, I realized that I had the VA loan at my disposal, which is a 0%. Anybody listening that's in the military, it's a 0% down government-backed loan that you can buy up to 4 units. And it was like, boom, why look for something else? It's the lowest hanging fruit. What is the lowest hanging fruit so I can take my first step and start having that bias towards action? So I learned everything I could about wholesaling, flipping, real estate owned, foreclosures, multifamily. Okay, what's the resources available to me? VA loan. All right, let's go take it down. So after I had closed on that first one, because I had started learning about financial literacy, because I had, I was actually on a deployment when I closed on that first property. And anytime you're deployed, you start making money. You're making more money, and you're not spending as much money because you're working 12 hours a day. So I started to be able to stack up some cash built on the foundation of me getting myself out of debt. I used every penny to climb out of the $20,000 of debt that I was in. I had sold my car. I learned that I could live off of $1,236.39 every month. I dialed it in to where I knew I could go buy a 5 pounds of lentils and 5-pound bag of rice, and I could eat for 2 weeks. I dialed it in so tight so that I could build a foundation. Was it sexy? No. Was it fun? Absolutely not. But it was what was necessary and required, and the resources that were available to me, I needed to steward those as best as possible so that I could put some money in my bank account. But now that I'd closed on that building, I needed to set my sights on the next target. And that was, okay, now I got to get involved in the right community, find those next individuals who are going to help me along the way. I was going to meetup after meetup after meetup, found a good core group of young investors that were motivated. And a wholesaler brought me a duplex, and I had the money that I saved up. It was about $15,000. And to close on this thing with closing costs and the 10% down payment from a hard money lender, I spent every penny of that. Basically, I had the whole thing lined up and it all went to crap. And the value of having someone next to me who understood what it means to go through hard times was said to me. I'll never forget, if there's anybody that can figure out how to close on this thing, it's you. So I went to work. I was texting people, I had met along the way. Hey, can you help me? Can you bring some money? Can you do this? Can you do that? And it led me to hard money. I was like, okay, I can use that. They'll fund me, even though it's my first deal. I had to go through multiple hard money lenders to find someone that would lend to me. And then I closed on that, and it was a burr. So I burred right out of it. I got my cash out, and well, actually, I didn't get all my cash out. I left every penny in the deal. But my friend, who was also in the Air Force, called me. He was in Africa. He said, "Hey, dude, I heard you're getting into real estate investing." I said, "How did you hear from all the way across the world?" He said, I want in. I see what you're doing. I want in. So he brought some money. I knew how to find deals. We married the two. We went and bought 8 units together. And then there was a period of time where I didn't buy any deals. It weighed on me. I joined the Legacy Mastermind, which is the mastermind you and I met in. Very high level real estate entrepreneurs, very successful people, and me, having like 18 units at the time, trying to figure out, okay, let's go into the next thing. Let's go start buying apartment buildings. But we weren't ready for that. We should have kept stacking up 2, 3, 4 unit properties and just continue to build out our maturity in business. Just like when I was going through the Air Force, building out my training, getting the reps, doing the things so that I'd be ready for more responsibility. But I decided I'm going to jump into the big pool of responsibility, and it was too heavy for me to carry at the time. So every meetup that we would come to in the legacy group, I would talk to people doing trailer parks or RV parks or storage or this, and I would leave every event with a new thing that I was going to try and start up because I heard, oh, they're making millions of dollars doing this. It must be so easy. And turns out it's actually incredibly challenging. So I would go through this iteration of like, I can't figure this out. Maybe the real estate isn't for me. Maybe I'm not cut out for this. But really, I was just running around with shiny object syndrome, constantly comparing myself to other people who have been digging in the same trench for years and years and years, thinking I can just kind of ride their coattails along the way. Not how it works. And so I ended up separating from my business partner just because we were kind of going in two different paths. I moved back to Ohio, and dude, I had to give up that ego of, if I am not buying real estate, I'm not worth anything. If I'm not closing on deals, then what are the people around me going to think of me? And I laid that all down. You know, I know you and I have had conversations about this, but I mean, the Lord just got a hold of my heart and was like, man, this has nothing to do with real estate. You're trying to get your identity from real estate when you should be getting your identity from me. And I remember I was sitting right here at this desk when I had that revelation, and it was like, oh my gosh, I've been trying to grasp onto something so that I can be somebody, but real estate will never fill that hole. So I gave it up to the Lord, and literally that week, dude, 2 6-unit buildings. I'd been trying to get into commercial real estate for 2.5 years. 2 6-unit buildings came available, fell right into my lap, and I closed on both of them on the same day using hard money. And so we renovated those buildings, and then it was time to set our sights on the next thing. And I learned all the things about how to renovate a building from top to bottom, all the lessons learned, and it prepared me for the next step, which was then I bought a 28-unit portfolio of multifamily properties, 6 buildings total, and raised the money from the group, figured out my broker was in the group. It just goes to show by being around high-level people. And then a month later, another realtor came to me and said, hey, I saw a building. I know exactly what you're looking for. You want small, commercial multifamily buildings for maybe 5 to 15 units. Here's a 6-unit building, but that seller was selling 3 other buildings. So we picked up 17 units then and just renovated all of them. The span that it took me to renovate those 6 units, I've renovated 35 units in that same amount of time, and just learning iteration after iteration, all using hard money to close on the property, raising the renovation capital so I can have it at my disposal and go buy materials and resources in bulk. And we're getting ready to enter into, as we speak, refinancing those deals. And this is how we keep 100%, or how I keep 100% of my portfolio and keep 100% of the cash flow, by buying deals well below market value, refinancing them, paying out the hard money lender and a private investor, and keeping the properties until we decide what the next thing is.
Dude, that's a 10-minute masterclass right there. Seriously. I mean, it's this world of real estate. I mean, we're both in it, but I remember back to when I was kind of dipping my toes in it, and it was so intimidating, that here I am. Like, I didn't really get heavy into real estate until probably my early to mid 30s. So here I am, a professional at my career, right? I'm very successful in this W-2 career that I am. I'm an adult. I'm a grown man that I'm not the smartest in the world, but when I look at real estate and I talk to people doing high level real estate, I was so intimidated. Like, to the point where I was scared to be in the rooms because I didn't want to look like I didn't know what I didn't know, But once I got over that fear, and I want to go back to something you said towards the beginning of the podcast, you spent a long time consuming education, podcasts, books, all the things, like just dove into it. The same story as me. So you didn't just dive in and take action without any education. You were learning, take action, learning, take action, learning, take action. And then once you dialed your focus in, you mentioned the shiny object syndrome. We all have a little bit of that, some more than others. I'm extreme where I've got to have a business partner that keeps me dialed in. But when you dial into something, for us, it was lending. Like we focused on that, put everything else to the side and dialed in. For you, it was slowly buying these smaller deals, getting gradually bigger. And then boom, now you've got a good balance sheet. You've got good experience. Banks will talk to you. And now you can start migrating up to these bigger deals. And all that, it doesn't happen overnight. So the people that are listening that want to dip their toes in it, you don't just like dipping your toes in it means start educating yourself, get around the right people, pay the money to be in the groups. When I joined Legacy Family, it's the first time I had ever paid a penny to be around people, right? I'm a social butterfly. I'm always around people. I create things that I'm around people. But this was the first time that I paid money, a lot of money, to go experience being around people that were 10 times further than I was, just to consume their knowledge and consume their experience, borrow that belief, and gain a bunch of mentors through that process. So number one, people need to educate themselves, be in the right groups, but then you either have it or you don't, or you've either built it or you haven't through experience. But you got to be resilient and know that this is not going to be easy. My path is not going to be as easy as the guy that has 3,000 units. My path, and his path wasn't easy, right? And I'm breaking like Tim Bratz. Tim Bratz bought early on a lot of crappy deals, right? But he did it to get the experience, to get the reps to the point where he's at now. You're doing that same thing. So I think it's an incredible lesson in just education, action, be around the right people, and being resourceful. And that's probably the biggest thing you said is, and you learned it through your military experience, you know?
Yeah. And there's a really key lesson. Like, I was excellent at being an analyst. But I got the reps in. I was committed to it. I loved it. I wanted to be really good at it, and I was. You were excellent at whatever it was you were doing before you got into real estate. You were operating at a high level. So people who are listening, if you were operating at a high level in one thing, it's so easy to transition those specific skills that you have garnered over years and years and years of being in the trenches, building somebody else's business, to now transition them over to building your business. I got the skill set of being an excellent communicator. Like we talked about earlier, I'm not the smartest dude in the room, but because I have the ability to communicate an idea well, it's gotten me into rooms that I wouldn't have gotten in before. Somebody else who has a different skill set. Maybe you're really good at running the numbers, which is one of the things I initially partnered with my previous partner on, because he was really good at being dialed in and building out programs for us to run the numbers on our deals. That was a skill set that got him into that right room. So for anybody listening, if you're operating at a high level, it's less daunting when you rely on your experiences of the past to apply it to your new transition versus saying, I don't know anything about this. I don't have anything to offer. What is it that makes you unique? What is it that makes you, what skill set do you have to offer that some people don't have? It's that thing that you will be able to bring to the right rooms that will get you to have right conversations and get you into the next right opportunities. So it was one of those things that it allowed me to get over the imposter syndrome, because, dude, I have all these other things that I bring to the table. Now I get to MC the events. That gets me to have conversations with people I might not normally be talking to. What is that specific thing for you? And to your point of, it takes time. It's simple, but it isn't easy. It's simple, but it isn't easy. And it is a constant battle internally of staying the course, staying Of course, dude. I watch videos on TikTok all the time. The 23-year-old making $200,000 a month wholesaling on Zillow. And I'm like, oh my gosh, dude, that's so easy. That's this, that's that. Or talking to probably a mutual friend of ours, Jake Sullivan, yesterday. He's talking about transitioning into land and how he's working less, but he's making more. And I'm like, dude, that's not your lane right now. It's not for you right now. You're building. Now I'm picking up some steam. Now I have momentum. It wouldn't make sense to take my eye off the ball and go try something else when I've got something built out that is working for me, and being okay with, we live off of $3,600 a month, dude. We live off $3,600. It would be less if, my wife has a horse and, we pay for its boarding and its feed and all that stuff. So that increases our expenses a little bit, but still $3,600 a month. And I'm telling people this at the legacy event, and they said $3,600 is our grocery bill. And, it's being okay with the season that I'm in while I build this out, because 5 years from now, I'll have built something that if I wanted to just say, I'm going to hire a team and they run it for me completely, and I just live off of the overflow and the abundance, I can do that. Versus if I'm wholesaling, dude, you got to run that machine every day, all day, to keep leads flowing in, because naturally people go buy the house, they go buy the cars, they increase their income. And it's just figuring out what is the lane that you're in. How can you transition the skills of excellence that you had from whatever you did previously into this, and just stay the course until you reap the harvest.
Yeah. It's funny. You mentioned talking to Jake. Bill and I had a call with, I'll share his name, but Josh Dixon, Josh from the group.
Yep.
Yesterday, and he was running some ideas by us, and we were on a Zoom call, and Bill could just see my wheels spinning. Like I had a page full of new ideas based off what we were talking, and it had nothing to do about what we were talking about with Josh. He was just like triggering some ideas. And as soon as we get off the call, I texted Bill. I said, I'm not going to hit you with all of it right now, but I've got a bunch of ideas that just came from that. And his response, which I talked about on stage in Napa, was a middle finger emoji, because that's his way of slowing me down. Like, let's focus on what we're focused on. We're doing good at it. Let's keep rolling. But you mentioned just then about living off of a tight budget right now. I love that. Like, you're recently married. You and Lena, y'all are a beautiful couple. No children yet. I don't know if that's in the plans or not, but right now, you guys are in a season of life where you can do that, and and it's a hard choice to make. It's hard not to go travel the world and spend all your money, or go have crazy dinners a couple times a week and spend, just have all the luxuries. It's a difficult thing to do, because on paper, Trevor, you're a millionaire, right?
Yeah.
You're a millionaire. But equity doesn't pay the light bill, right? It's, so you got to, hunker down. And fortunately for you guys, you and Lena, y'all have a wonderful, relationship, in the sense y'all are both willing to make these sacrifices right now because you see a vision, right? So, and I'm going to come back to this vision, because I have a question around that, but I kind of want to, before we start wrapping things up, talk to us about how you got into this space of the live events, the emceeing and stuff like that. Did that start with Legacy, or was that something you had done prior?
It started with Legacy.
Okay.
It definitely started with Legacy. I wanted to touch on just one point really quick.
Sure. Yeah.
I was like, fighting that battle. I just asked my wife, because we like to drive through neighborhoods that have really nice houses. And we were driving through one the other day, and we're just like, we love dreaming about what could be in the future. We don't need that, right? But it's cool to think, man, what we're building, one day we will be able to, if God willing, we can move in and expand our lifestyle a little bit. And I asked her, I'm 31, she's 29, approaching 30. I said, do you look at other people that are in their 30s that have, the really nice cars and the big house and do you look at that and, feel a little bit of FOMO? Do you feel like, what we're doing isn't worth it? And she said, there's moments of time where I look at that and it would be nice to not have to worry. I mean, constantly thinking about the business, constantly thinking about where we're headed, constantly living in the state of delayed gratification. She said, but what we're building will never amount to, you're going to be home. You're going to have time. We're going to have space to build out our family and really live out the priorities that we say, which is God, family, then business. We'll actually be able to prioritize those things in a meaningful way and give out of our abundance. So it is a constant battle to fight those things mentally. It's like, I should be here. I should be, people see we have 73 units. Oh, they must be rolling in it. No, we have to live in that state of, man, I'm putting off what I really want and what the world says that we should have right now so that we can build something meaningful.
Man, and we'll go a little bit long because I gotta say this. I absolutely love that, but I got goosebumps because I can relate in the sense when I met my wife, we were in our I was 25 when I met her, and she was 23, I think. And I remember then, and I was getting into my career pretty well, and I was making decent money, but I had this vision of buying a farm in my hometown where I was raised and building my dream house on it. And I used to take her around when we were dating, and I would drive around the county, like down the back roads and stuff, and actually point out farms to her, like, this is my vision. I can see it. I can't do it right now, but I can see it. And then as we got married, we would have these long conversations about, like, are we willing to sacrifice what all of our friends are getting right now? They're building the nice houses and, having the nice vehicles. Are we willing to sacrifice that for a few years so we can work toward, because she bought into my vision of what I wanted. And we were. So much so that in our first 5 years of marriage, we moved 6 times because I kept finding deals that required us to buy them and kind of live in, fix and flip and stuff like that and roll that equity forward. We had our first child. While during all this, we looked at a video the other day. The first time my daughter was crawling, the video, you could see painter's tape all over the wall because we were living in another fix and flip. So my point there is to what you said. That's not how you want to spend the first 5 years of marriage, right? Moving house to house, flipping houses, sanding floors, painting every night, stuff like that. But we had a vision, and ultimately I was able to buy one of those farms and build our dream house because we delayed the gratification. So when you spoke to what you and Lena are dealing with right now, I lived it, and dude, I get goosebumps thinking back on it and reflecting back because I don't look back and say, man, we could have been doing all these great things back then. No, we sacrificed a few years to get to where we ultimately got. And so I applaud you both for being aligned, leaning into your faith with all of this and heading that direction. So I just had to make that note.
No, I love it. And I love to hear, this is what bonds us, right? Is like in the military, we were freaking, the Taliban is launching mortars and they're hitting the ground next to our building, right? Those are the things that bonded us going through those tough times, living. But these types of things is what I love so much about business and real estate and entrepreneurship is you and I are now, forever connected by the struggle that we went through. And now, like, I look forward to the day that I am, kind of where you guys are at, where, you're not living on $3,600 a month. You are building something. And the vision is very clearly cast and, well-oiled machine. So again, I applaud you as well, because it's cool. It's cool to see, the other side of that.
Yeah.
Did you want me to answer that question?
Yeah, I do, but you just said
Okay.
something that I've said 100 times in the last 2 weeks, talking about casting a vision. That came from Kelly Garrett at I Work With an Event. I can't get it out of my mind.
Yeah.
Creating culture, casting a vision. So
Yes,
clear and stuck in your mind too, because that
dude,
was
big
so
time.
powerful, man. But yes, back to your the emceeing. Just kind of touch on how you got into that, because that is a superpower you have, that because you can't chase so many things, you can't lean into that full time. But I've never seen anybody control an event like you do. And I've been to hundreds of big events with hundreds of people in it. You captivate the crowd. You make the speakers that come up feel like the most important person in the world. Like, you research, you dig deep. Where did that start? And, kind of where are you with that part of your life right now?
Yes. So, emceeing is truly one of the great joys of my life. It's so cool to be able to step on stage and do what I do. And there's so many different things that have happened that led me up to that very moment. And I'll touch on them briefly. In high school, there was this guy, Zach Goss, and him and I were friends. And Zach Goss was the kind of guy, when the teacher would say, "Hey, I need a volunteer," no hesitation, his hand goes up. He would say yes to everything. And he was a go-getter type of guy. And I love this about him, and I'll always remember it. And it stuck with me through the military. When they asked for volunteers, boom, my hand would go up. I'd say yes. Let me be the guy. I want to be up front. I want to be leading the people. And so that's point number one. And I'll tie it in here in a second. Point number two is all the iterations of briefings that I got, building the skill of communication, being able to communicate an idea well. Oftentimes, I'm commanding a room in terms of I am a low-level airman briefing a general. I'm a low-level airman briefing a Delta Force operator of 15 years, now turned CIA operative, multiple of them, right? I needed to be, when I stand in front to deliver the information, I need to be, one, clear, two, concise, but also speak with confidence so that the people are paying attention to me. If I stand up there and I'm like, okay, guys, this is Sangari, and he's a mid-level Taliban commander, and they're going to be like, dude, get out of here. Get him out of here now. I want somebody up there that can speak to me and tell me the information that I need to know. So clear, concise, and confident. And the confidence came from rep after rep after rep, and doing the hard work of finding out information that the guys would not have gotten on their own, right? Even with years of experience in the battle space, I'm seeing it from a different perspective, because my goal is to keep them safe with as much information that is important to them as possible. So those two things leading up to, me joining a real estate mastermind, and we were at an event and they had JJ live. He was the MC, and his first MCing event he did with us, he did this thing where he's a big social media guy. He recorded a live video from the stage in Las Vegas, and he said, "Hey, I'm going to do a quick thing, show you how easy it is to post on social media. But when I turn around and say, and we buy apartment buildings, everybody jump up and go crazy." So that's what we did. Everybody jump up and go crazy. Next event, he was the MC as well. And he said, "Hey, who remembers the thing I did last event where I had, everybody go crazy when I said we buy apartment buildings? Who wants to do that?" The memory of Zach Goss, my friend from high school, and all the times I had said yes before, was like, boom, yes, I'll do that. I had no idea what I was going to say. I had no idea what I was going to do, but I walked up on stage and everybody came back from break. I had a little thing that I had just prepared in my head, and I said, I'm in a room full of incredible real estate investors, entrepreneurs, and I've learned one thing from this group: if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, go together. And another thing, we buy apartment buildings. Turn around and everybody goes crazy, and I post the video. 2 weeks later, they were looking for another MC, and they called me and they say, "Hey, we really liked the charisma that you showed from the stage. Have you ever had any interest in MCing? We'd love to have you MC our events." And again, said yes. No idea, never done it, never been on stage in that way before, but I said yes. And it turned into something beautiful because now I use all the skills of commanding a room from commanders, trigger pullers, experienced operators to now entrepreneurs. Same thing, different flavor, right? So I need to be able to command that room. And now using the skills of building a target package on Sangari, who he is, what he does, what makes him who he is, and why we need to go kill capture him, transition that to high level business owners, entrepreneurs, motivational speakers who have used their time and dedication to build something incredible, and I want them to be represented for it. So I go through and I learn everything I can about them, build out my own personalized bio for them. I never touch their bio that they prepare, where it's like, Johnny did X amount of deals and he has this many millions of dollars. No. Nobody cares about that. People want to be inspired. And then you bring them up on stage and boom, now you've built a connection with that person that they'll remember for their entire life because you did something that nobody else would do for them. And now I get to travel the nation, opening up shows, introducing speakers. And it's just been, one of the greatest joys of my professional career.
Dude, I've been to 8 events that you've emceed. So I've been to 8 legacy events since I've joined. I've only missed one since I've joined. You're probably introducing on average about 4 speakers throughout the event. So that's 30 speakers. To a person, every single one of them gets on stage after that introduction. They all say the same thing, like, number one, how the hell did you find all that stuff out about me? That's the best I've ever been introduced. And some of these speakers speak on a weekly basis around the world, right? They're getting introduced by MCs 50 times a year, 100 times a year. And all of them walk up there blown away, almost at a loss for words, because they just heard somebody introduce stuff about them that they may have forgotten, right? You're digging so deep. But I got to share a funny story from this last event. You don't even know this. Before you introduced our last keynote speaker, the last day there, we took a break. So we had just done some kind of workshop thing, and then we took like a 5-minute break before the next speaker. And I walked into the restroom, and you're at a urinal beside the next speaker in 2 different urinals. And you are quizzing him. And he didn't know what you were doing, but you're asking him things about like his life and, oh, you did this. Oh, where did you live? Blah, blah, blah. Literally 5 minutes before you're introducing this guy. So you obviously had already done your research, but you were just getting a little bit of icing to add on to it. And so I paid attention. I was behind y'all listening to everything you talked, heard his answers. You get on stage and so just smoothly interjected everything you had just learned 5 minutes in a urinal prior into your introduction. And nobody else knew that. I was the only other one in that bathroom, but the way you did that a lot and was able to weave it into your natural introduction that you had prepared was phenomenal. And it just kind of added to the legacy in my mind of what is Trevor B. West. So I had to share that with you. And
wow.
Yeah, it was awesome. So
thank you, dude. I appreciate you.
You're phenomenal. And, I know we've got folks listening in the audience that run events or they're part of events and stuff like that. And I know it's something that you're not going to spend every week traveling around the country doing speaking events, but you do it. You offer those services, and I encourage anybody to reach out to you. And if nothing else, try it one time or just have a conversation with Trevor to get to know him and hear kind of how he approaches these things. You won't regret it. I'm gonna wrap up with one more question. Well, a statement, and then it's going to lead into a question. You introduce yourself on social media as Trevor B. West, 31-year-old Christian real estate investor. Why is that?
That's a great question. One, I want to set the stage for who I'm talking to. I want to talk to 18 to 40-year-old people. So by stating my age, they know, okay, he's a 31-year-old. Also, it's a 31-year-old who's doing something that is different than most people doing it. And I say that I'm a Christian because I want people to know exactly what is the number one thing in my life is my relationship with Jesus Christ. Without my relationship with Jesus, nothing matters. Nothing I touch, the empire that I build, the relationships I form, if not for Jesus, is nothing. Because I believe that the only way to get into heaven is through a relationship with Jesus. So if without him, I can build all of this business and die and leave nothing. I can form connections and do good for people and die, and it means absolutely nothing if I did not share the message of Jesus with people. Building real estate business is cool. It's a calling that God has placed over my life, but the buildings I own are not mine. They're God's. He gave them to me, and I'm stewarding them. So we pray over all of our renters. We leave welcome gifts with Bibles in there. We are always a resource for them because when we die, we are going to meet our Maker. We're going to meet Jesus, and we are going to be judged. And I want to make sure that with all the things that we've talked about in this podcast of me getting my training and being able to communicate an idea well and being able to command a room and traveling all over the world and meeting vendors and investors and all these people, I want to be a light for those people so that they can find the good news, so that they can have hope for a future, so that they can not only just build out what they're doing and use their experiences to build something here on earth, but build something that is not just going to be temporal, but build something that is going to be eternal. Because God got a hold of my heart when I was laying on that couch and I broke my leg. It wasn't a life or death situation, but God used it to transition me to a new way of thinking, a new life, and use my skills for not just for good, but for God. And so I want to let people know, one, that's the most important thing to me. Two, you can be a Christian and not broke. Like, God does not want us to be poor. He just doesn't want us to serve money over him. So there's so many different things, but that's the biggest reason is why I introduced myself that way.
I love it. And to be clear, I did not prepare Trevor for any of these questions. So to hear you articulate that answer so well, that tells me that this isn't just fluff. It's not a thing you're saying to get clout or attention. You truly live it and believe it. Now, I want you to finish the sentence. We're going to do a little thought experience, and this is going to be the last thing we do before we wrap up. Let's fast forward 20 years. I'm Trevor B. West. I'm a 51-year-old Christian, fill in the blank. How's it end then?
I'm Trevor B. West. I am a 51-year-old. Oh, wow. I'm a 51-year-old Christian. That's so tough. That's so deep, dude. 51-year-old. Yeah, yeah. I'm a 51-year-old Christian.
I've heard you say that the mindset, real estate and the money is just a tool, and you're going through all the pain you got to go through now to build into something. What is that? What is 51-year-old Trevor going to be waking up thinking about and motivated to do, and how's his influence on the world going to be then versus now?
Here's the thing. My name is Trevor B. West. I'm a 51-year-old Christian Jesus follower. I'm a son of God, and I do the will of my Father. I say this all the time, and I've been saying it a lot. After we refinance these deals, there's not going to be someone beating down my door saying, I need to go buy more real estate. We could refinance these deals and just live a really good life, doing whatever it is that we want, making, $15,000, $20,000 a month, cruising, get systems in place. But who knows where God is taking me? I had no idea that I'd be stepping on stages. I had no idea that I'd be investing in real estate. But wherever God is leading me, I want to imitate my friend Zach Goss, and I want to say yes. I'm here for it, whatever it is. And there's this Bible verse: the steps of the righteous are ordered by the Lord. And there's another verse that says, all things work for the good of those who love God and are called according to his purposes. So with those two verses, I know that no matter what steps I take, as long as I'm living righteously, God is guiding me. God is the sneakiest person in the universe. He has unlimited resources. When we're talking about using the resources that God has given us, he has unlimited, untapped, unhindered resources. So when I trust that God is taking me somewhere, I'm just along for the journey. I believe that I'm called to real estate. I believe that I'm called to enterprise. I believe I'm called to not only just MC events, but I'm called to host my own events that are centered around God and business. I just want to lead people to the cross because it's not about me. It has nothing to do with me and everything to do with him.
Love it, man. Your passion, your integrity, your character, it just screams like it's contagious. I'm very happy and grateful to have, to be able to be a little bit of a part of your life, just to get to know you through this group. I'm sure as you continue investing in real estate and we continue growing our fund and doing things, at some point our paths will cross from a business standpoint. But even if it doesn't, you're a bright light, man. And the way you're doing things, the way you have done things, I'm excited to just have a front row seat to it, and I'm excited to see where you and Lena take your marriage and your family and stuff like that. And I appreciate you coming on here. I think you've shared some experiences, and you've made the parallels to business in such an articulate way. I mean, I think it's going to resonate with people, and I really appreciate it, man.
Yeah, man, I'm glad. I truly appreciate the opportunity to speak with you here, speak with your audience. It's been a pleasure to know you and see how you've grown, seeing you on stage at the last event, sharing your experiences, how you dial in, prioritizing your family over your business and really going deep with the relationships that you're immediately called to, which is your family. It truly inspires me because we don't have kids yet. It's definitely coming soon. And to be able to have someone that's lived it, that's gone through the trials and tribulations of running a business, having a family, and then the culmination of what you've been able to turn it into and where you're going is like, oh man, it's like somebody laying down the roadmap for me. So I am truly grateful to see how you've done it all.
I appreciate that. When people praise anything I've done in business, it impacts me none. I don't care about that. When people acknowledge how I show up for my family, it means the world to me. So I appreciate you saying that. Trevor B. West, thank you again for coming on Burning the Ships. I can't wait. I won't be able to be in Asheville, unfortunately. Bill will be there. I think Tim will, but I'll have to catch you at the next one. But I really appreciate our friendship. Can't wait to continue to follow your journey, man. And it's been a very, very long-awaited pleasure to have you on this podcast. We've been trying for a while, but appreciate it. And that'll wrap up another episode of Burning the Ships. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Burning the Ships. I want to give a special thanks to our sponsor, 608B Capital, helping real estate investors secure fast, reliable funding to fuel their boldest moves. If you're ready to take your investing to the next level, visit 608bcapital.com to learn more. If you found value in today's episode, please take a moment to rate and review the podcast. Your feedback not only helps us improve, but it also helps us reach more people who are ready to burn the ships and commit fully to their goals. And don't forget to share the episode with someone who needs that extra push to take bold action. I'll leave you with this. Burning the ships isn't just about removing the option to retreat. It's about unlocking the courage to charge forward. No matter the odds, the past is behind you and the future is yours to conquer. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time on Burning the Ships.